Even though Pokémon is almost 30 years old and the games have introduced a bunch of mechanics over the years, there's a bunch of cool stuff that they haven't done. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over 10 crazy mechanics that the Pokémon games should include. Now, the emphasis is going to be on crazy here, so you're going to hear some wild stuff. But it's also stuff that I believe, for one reason or another, could also feasibly be implemented into an actual game, regardless of how likely it actually is. And with that said, let's go ahead and start with a game with every region. I know, this is a classic idea that has long been laughed at as impossible, but the thing is, it's actually very possible. It might not be very likely at all, but it's definitely very possible from a technical standpoint. The way I imagine a game like this could work is that it would likely have to be something along the lines of a Legends game, which would actually be a great fit for it, and follow in the footsteps of Pokémon Journeys, where the player is invited to compete in some kind of worldwide Pokémon tournament that has them challenging trainers from all over the place. From there, you would simply pick about 10 or so trainers across the Pokémon world for the player to challenge, and allow the player to travel to the cities where those characters are located. You wouldn't open up the whole region to the player, and instead you would just be allowed to explore the city where the trainers are that you need to battle, and maybe an adjoining route or two to allow for the training and catching of Pokemon, and overall, it would just be a game that has a region's worth of explorable areas, which they're obviously already doing anyway, that are simply spread out across all of the different locales of all the different regions, instead of being concentrated in one singular region specifically. Then you could also throw in a dash of plot with the evil team, and then even open up further areas of the various regions for the post-game, which would obviously be incredible, and you wouldn't even necessarily have to open up the entirety of all the regions either. I think we would all be totally happy with just a few areas here and there. Plus, we have also seen that region hopping in-universe is also entirely doable thanks to the Scarlet and Violet DLC, where you are literally fast traveling between 3 different regions like it's no big deal. So yeah, this could definitely happen in my opinion. It's probably never ever going to happen, but this is a game that could absolutely be made if Game Freak really wanted to, and it would obviously be amazing if it was. Next up is the idea of crossover mechanics. What I mean by this is that Pokemon games typically have their signature feature that they introduce, like Mega Evolutions, regional variants, etc. Well, now that we have a handful of these kinds of mechanics, why not cross them over with each other and really have some fun with them? This could result in things like regional variant Mega Evolutions, Mega Paradox Pokemon, or even convergent forms of Ultra Beasts, where they're like our Earth's version of the actual Ultra Beasts. There are so many fun possibilities with this idea, and I feel like it's the perfect way to expand on these features after their debut generation in order to continue to allow fans to enjoy them while also continuing to make them relevant and interesting at the same time. We do have 8 more mechanics to cover though, so I'm going to go ahead and move on now, and I'm going to throw in a more unique choice with this next one. I feel like it would be pretty cool to have a Pokemon game that has multiple endings. Games with multiple endings in general is not a new concept, but it's always an interesting one whenever you play a game that has that feature. And with Pokemon's focus on building your own team and creating your own adventure, I feel like there could be some potential here, and it could be a good fit. One idea that I've thought of as far as how you could implement this is having 3 different endings that are dependent on which starter Pokemon you choose at the beginning of the game, and maybe also throughout the story, depending on the starter you pick, there could also be little differences here and there as well, which would really add a ton of playability to any game, and it would also cause a ton of people to pick starters that they wouldn't otherwise pick in order to be able to see all the endings of the game, and they would actually give those Pokemon a chance, which is also a really big part of the fun of Pokemon as well. So this is another thing that I think could definitely be really cool. Something I have long thought would be amazing to see as part of the plot of a Pokemon game is literally discovering brand new Pokemon that nobody knows about in the game itself. We have had mysterious Pokemon before that people don't really know much about, but somebody in the games always knows what the Pokemon is and has heard about it already. And one of the cores of the Pokemon franchise itself that keeps it going generation after generation is this wondrous idea of what new Pokemon could be out there that we've never seen before, that are in distant regions that we've never seen before either. So why not inject this concept directly into the games themselves and actually make it a part of the gameplay? We could discover maybe a legendary Pokemon at the very beginning of the game, and no one has any idea of what it is at all, and no one has ever seen it before. And then the plot of the game could unfold from there, trying to discover what this Pokemon is and where it came from, and then the evil team could catch wind of this and come after you to try and steal this new Pokemon. Like, this genuinely just writes itself. And you could even make this like your Mega Evolution or regional variant feature of this game, where multiple special Pokemon are popping up that no one has seen before, and the game could be about the mystery behind them and why they're popping up in the first place. I think this would make for a phenomenal concept for a new Pokemon game, so hopefully someday they'll do something that resembles this. This next one isn't really a mechanic in the traditional sense of the word, but I think it would be amazing to get a new 2D pixel-based Pokemon game. While Pokemon has firmly been in the 3D space for over a decade now, with Pokemon's extended history with sprite-based games and the love of retro, indie, pixel-based games in general that still very much exists within the gaming community, I think a new 2D game would actually pretty much be universally seen as a godsend by both the Pokemon community and the gaming public as a whole. It could be a special one-off thing that they just do for the sake of an anniversary or something, but returning to that classic style even just once, and in my personal opinion, getting to see Pokemon from the 3D era actually get official 2D sprites and be able to see these newer Pokemon operate in a 2D game is honestly one of the most magical Pokemon experiences I can possibly think of. And again, I feel like people would genuinely be bowing down to Game Freak and the Pokemon Company if they actually made this a thing. So not only would it make for a great game, I feel like it would also be a great business decision and generate some awesome PR as well. And as long as we're really dreaming, if they set this game in a new region, or even in one of the 3D regions to be able to get a chance to see those in 2D as well, it would send this game into the absolute stratosphere. So if Game Freak really wanted to knock some socks off, and I mean really, really knock them off, that is something that I would definitely recommend they do. Alright, next up, let's go ahead and talk about what's on the thumbnail, and that is Fusion Pokemon. This has been an idea that has long been in the minds of both the fans and even Game Freak themselves to an extent, and with it being a thing that is basically already on everyone's mind anyway, I think it is time to finally make it happen on a larger scale. And despite its craziness, I think it is genuinely possible. The way that I would personally go about it is making it a certain generation's signature feature, a la Mega Evolution or Z-Moves or Gigantamax Pokemon, and it would essentially put an emphasis on breeding. Along with this feature, there would also be a select group of Pokemon introduced, and they could either be brand new Pokemon, or you could make them variants of existing Pokemon, but the method of obtaining them would simply be that you breed two specific Pokemon together. Now, the kicker here is that this would not result in literally an amalgamation of Skitty and Wailord, for instance, but rather it would produce a Pokemon that has traits of both of them. So in that particular combination, it could result in a new Water-type cat Pokemon, or maybe a Water-type variant of Skitty. And also, on that note, I think it would be amazing to actually use Skitty and Wailord as one of the pairings that produces a new Pokemon, just to acknowledge the meme in an actual game. I think that would be incredible. And as wacky as fusion Pokemon sound in general, I think this version of it could genuinely be amazing and also legitimately work. And in my opinion, it would probably be one of the best signature features of a generation if it actually happened. And on the topic of new Pokemon forms, I next have to give a shout out to Hoodlum Callum, because this next idea comes from one of his recent videos, so I'm going to provide a link to it in the credits in the description if you want to check it out, and I recommend you do because Callum makes good stuff. With that said though, this idea is special evolutions of shiny Pokemon. For instance, we all know that regional variant Pokemon can sometimes evolve into a Pokemon that only the regional variant form can evolve into. So it would basically be that same idea, but with shiny Pokemon instead. Shinies are already one of Pokemon's most beloved features, and lots of people play the games specifically to shiny hunt. So why not build on the concept a little bit and introduce a handful of new Pokemon evolutions that evolve specifically in their shiny forms? This would not only be phenomenally cool, but it would create a ton of buzz online and send shiny hunting to completely new heights, which would of course result in shiny hunting streams for these new Pokemon and just content in general, which would lead to a ton of free marketing and just overall hype for the games that this feature was introduced in. So I think it would be an excellent move strategically speaking as well. Most importantly though, it would just be amazingly fun, and overall it would be an incredible inclusion to any Pokemon game, in my opinion, if it actually happened. Meanwhile, another classic idea in this category that has been around forever is 3-typed Pokemon. And as the years go on, it feels more and more like maybe we should just give it a try. Due to terrestrialization though, which just came out in Generation 9, I don't think this is a thing that's going to be happening anytime soon because we're probably done with type-focused mechanics for a little bit, but as an idea, I think this does actually have some merit. In fact, if I were to implement it, I would actually do it as a feature just like terrestrialization, but instead of changing a Pokemon's type altogether, it would simply just add a third type onto it. And truthfully, if I'm being completely honest, I feel like if that was what terrestrialization was, it would have actually made it an even more fun and interesting mechanic, and again, it would have had a lot of hype around it simply due to the 3-type concept actually becoming a thing. I don't think that we're ever going to see a Pokemon that is naturally 3 types, but as a temporary feature like this, I think it could work and be pretty cool. Meanwhile, one feature that would add a lot of interest and challenge to the main story of a game is the ability of the evil team and/or the antagonists to steal the player's Pokemon. Now, this one might sound a bit more shocking because obviously no one would want their Pokemon stolen, but wouldn't it just be the wildest thing, and not to mention add a lot higher stakes to the games, if the evil team stole one of your Pokemon if you lost to them in battle? As much as this could also induce some rage, I feel like it would be a cool way to add some legitimate challenge and intensity to the playthrough of a game, especially because it wouldn't even have to be permanent. In order to not make everyone too mad, it could also be the case that if you lose your Pokemon as the result of losing to one of these evil team members, you could also get it back once you eventually beat that person that you lost to. So your Pokemon aren't truly going to be gone for good if you lose them. And ultimately, it just ups the ante a little bit for battles with the antagonists, which I definitely think the games could benefit a lot from. For this next one, I kind of went back and forth between a few different ideas that I had, but the one that both sounded the craziest and also like the most fun is a new game plus mode that also acts as an official randomizer mode. I don't think this is very likely to happen at all, because I don't think Pokemon as a company likes it when people randomize their games, but the idea of a New Game Plus mode in general that you could access once you beat the game would be a nice inclusion regardless, because it would keep the playability of the game going. And if the main draw of it was that the game was randomized, that would definitely keep people playing the games. It wouldn't even have to be that crazy of a randomizer if Pokemon wanted to just keep it on the tamer side of things. For instance, they could still keep the legendaries the same, they could maybe even keep the starters the same, and purely just randomize the standard wild Pokemon and trainer battles, and even that would definitely be worth playing the game through again, in my opinion. And like I said, I feel like it would keep people in general playing the game, which I feel like is the main goal of any video game. So while this one might not be very likely, I think it could genuinely be a lot of fun. Now I want to know what you guys think though, so be sure to tell me in the comments which of these features you would most like to see become a reality. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. With that said, thanks so much for watching, I'll see you soon with another new video, and until then, as always, I will smell you guys later.